So we looked at just 2 lines. If we looked and said the half-mile ring around transit, keep 95% of the land exactly as it is. Don't mess with the neighborhoods. Don't mess with, all of the areas. Just take the half-mile ring around public transportation on these 2 lines. You can put in 275,000 new units. Okay? We built a urban node at a suburban location densely around transit. This was our pilot project in Hillsboro, Oregon, the Silicon Forest. We went to the city and said, from a market standpoint, we can't afford to put the density here, but if you allow us to put the density here and give us 80% of our taxes back for 10 years, it'll offset the cost of structured parking. And we'll be able to triple the density. We'll add 770 units that aren't available otherwise. 1,400 people will have the opportunity to walk to transit, and we'll take 975 metric tons of CO2 out of the air. In addition, over the useful life of the buildings, we'll create $210 million of incremental revenue to the city with appreciably no additional costs. The city said yes, and today we just finished the last phase. This is in place, and the ridership calculation of Orenco Station in Hillsboro is up 1,100%, 11 times. So looking at the funding mechanism for public ridership, having an 11x utilization on public transportation has been fantastic. So you look at the Transbay Terminal in San Francisco. That is another opportunity to leverage public investment in transportation. This is the Capitol Hill Light Rail in Seattle. It's the picture that I showed earlier versus the auto spread. So how can we do this? The 4 cornerstones: education, environment, fiscal, and employment. If we just take the 5% of the land that is in the half-mile ring around transit and free it for development, we will be able to create the housing that's necessary to solve the housing crisis without disrupting the whole. Now, that's going to take leadership, and it takes teamwork. So what we would propose is that we join together, and I wish Mayor Garcetti was here because I could do this personally, but I understand he'll be here at lunch. If we go to Sacramento and say, we need to do this differently, okay, 800,000 units, assuming 250 units per project, is 3,200 EIRs that will be necessary to bring those things together. And the city on an annual basis processes 20 to 30. Any given time they have 100 EIRs, going across the deal. The thought process of us getting super efficient, all running out and getting a project, and turning in 3,200 EIRs would be 100 years worth of production that would be necessary. So we have to think about this differently. And so what we would suggest is that we have completed a study based on how much production is necessary to have the next available unit be available to folks at a affordable level. All that's available. We'd love to roll up our sleeves, but doing this at a concentrated level and using one process to get permission to build the right product in the right locations, we would submit to you, is the only way that we can actually address the housing shortage today and free employers, workers, etc., and quite frankly our grandkids and their children, and bring them into an environment that actually can house that deal. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here. Maybe we have time for a couple of questions.
So, Clyde, you've been one of the private sector leaders in talking about densification. I think last year you presented some very thought-provoking ideas about that if we densify 4% of our land mass here in Los Angeles, we can solve our housing crisis. He was also a big advocate of having the state really try to intervene to force local communities to develop land use policies that allow the acceleration and development of housing. You're one of the largest developers in Los Angeles of developing mixed-use communities. And can you kind of talk about, I know your production is down for 2019 compared to what you have had over the last number of years. I think you built a couple thousand units over the last few years, and a little frustrated to where we are in the process today. Can you share kind of some of your thoughts on how we should attack the problem?
So first, I just need to tell you all what a wonderful support it is, Senator Wiener, in terms of really calling the issue as what it is. being somebody who started my career at Embarcadero in San Francisco, and really understanding the transportation needs and housing needs in San Francisco, Representative Chu and moving 29, 23 forward, we worked on Tree Commons, for years, and seemingly, running into significant roadblocks. Here's the issue. We have to come together as a people to say the 5% of our land mass around public transportation in the walkable urban core is open for business.
You increased it from, I thought it was 4 or 5%.
Hey, listen, you're good for 10%, Brad. If you take 4 or 5% of our land, if we can come together and say just 5% of our land is open for business, then what we can do is, from the private sector, create an opportunity to work together to say, how do we bring down our costs? How do we streamline the process in a way that actually reduces the cost of the next available unit?